deal with airplane peanuts.
The biggest Kill Tony episode of all time went down last weekend at the LA Forum and included some of the wildest moments we've ever seen on this show. From Tim Dillon, Dr. Phil, and Post Malone on the panel, to drop-ins from RFK Jr., Bobby Lee, and a naked Ari Shaffir, the most legendary Mexican drum-off in Kill Tony history, and even teasing a potential deal with Netflix. All of which led up to the wildly controversial Rematch for regular ship between Hans Kim and Ric Diez that had a whole new set of rules. And in this video, we're diving deep into every single thing that happened at the Kia Forum, including exclusive interviews with both Hans Kim and Ric Diez, which obviously means there will be plenty of spoilers. But honestly, this cat's been out of the bag for days now with how many pictures have already been posted. So if you want to wait 5 more weeks to watch the edited version on YouTube, I understand, but this is what really happened at Kill Tony's biggest show ever. In a lot of ways, the Forum was like a victory lap for Tony and Redban, returning to LA for the first time in 3 years after their last show in California received a ticket for violating COVID rules. Obviously, with the show starting in the belly room of the Comedy Store and now playing in the city's most iconic venue, the LA homecoming storyline was really cool to see. But still, the main thing on everyone's mind seemed to be Ric vs. Hans Part 2. Leading up to the battle was 2.5 hours of madness that included Tim Dillon and Post Malone as guests, who were joined by Dr. Phil about 40 minutes into the show after he performed an entire set of roast jokes.
Little winded, I'm just here to take a shit and then I'll get out of here.
Apparently, the third panel spot was supposed to be for Snoop Dogg, but the night before he randomly bailed. Which may sound like a loss on paper, but per usual 2023 Guest of the Year Dr. Phil stole the show and helped Tony plow through a lot of rough moments from first-time bucket pulls. Speaking of the bucket, just like we saw at the HEB Center, there was a ton of booing on night 1, with multiple bucket pulls being people who have never done stand-up in their life. But at the Forum, nobody got booed harder than Netflix. We talked about this in a short that we posted earlier this week, but it seems like Netflix has been licking their chops eyeing up a deal with Kill Tony. However, when Tony brought up the fact that every Netflix executive was in the room at the beginning of the show, the entire Forum exploded with boos, much to Tony's dismay.
You guys may have just fucked up a multi-million-dollar deal for us. Thank you.
One of the earliest surprises of the night was RFK Jr. coming out to do 60 seconds of stand-up comedy, which really set up the panel for some great Aaron Belial jokes. But RFK set ended with a somewhat awkward interaction from his wife Cheryl Hines, which seemed like it was supposed to be a scripted joke for her to come out and cut him off from doing accents. But because she didn't have a microphone, it came off as kind of real. Or maybe it was real. Either way, all of this led up to the main event, the moment that everyone had been waiting for since New Year's Eve, Hans Kim vs. Ric Diez 2. But before we reveal the winner and talk directly with both comedians via Zoom, let's first hear from some of the die-hard Kill Tony fans that showed up to the LA Forum.
How long have you been a fan of?
I've been a fan of Kill Tony since the beginning, since there were 15 people in the belly room. I've been going since like 2015, and I've been watching. It's cool to see it go from a little small room at the Comedy Store till the Kia Forum right here.
I'm a newer fan. I've been watching for about a year now, but big time fan. I watch every week.
Honestly, like less than 6 months. I got turned on to it just recently, and I'm a huge fan of it ever since I first started watching it.
How long have you been a fan of Kill Tony?
Ooh, about 5 years. Yeah, I love him. He's amazing.
Like 3 years.
How long have you been a fan of Kill Tony?
2 years.
How long have you been a Kill Tony fan?
I've been a Kill Tony fan for about a year.
My name's Sebastian. I've been a fan of Kill Tony for a long time. Before I ever did stand-up, that's for sure. Way before my stand-up journey. While I was watching an episode one day, Redban said he was going to do a secret show, like a one-day secret show in LA, and I really wanted to just go see it. And I was going through this really hard depression at that time, and I'm not going to lie, I was the kind of guy you'd hang out with, and you just think, wow, he's really miserable. I'm sad now, so I don't want to be that guy anymore. And there was a fella by the name of Casey Rocket, and he made me laugh so hard for about 7 minutes, I forgot I was sad. I almost peed my pants. I couldn't breathe. And I realized the power of comedy. It's more than just jokes. You're changing lives out there. You're changing the chemical balances of people's brains. I think that's amazing. And by the grace of God tonight, we're going to be pulled out of that bucket. So,
what's your favorite part of the show? What do you like best?
Gotta say, when Tony be roasting people that kind of have a shit minute.
I like its format. I kind of how like anything could really happen. It's cool. Like I like the different like people that get pulled, get some wacky souls, yourself included. So it's really cool. I love seeing stuff like that.
The unexpectedness. You never know what's around the corner, who's coming out.
I think the best thing I like about the show is just the fact that it gives not even just, comedians that are trying to start their careers, but just the whole entire world an opportunity to sit back, relax, and just enjoy like a fireside chit chat with people that are fun. The Uncle Tom who's killing it, or the Jackie that's like Aunt Jackie who's just got the funny jokes, the one-liners.
I love that at any given moment you can have a superstar be made overnight. Or you can have someone bomb so hard. You can have somebody talk about like masturbating each other when they were 10. There's an episode. It's just the randomness. It's exciting. I love it.
Casey Rocket right now, but probably just the fact that anyone can go up. It could be horrible. You can yell at them.
What I like best is they say whatever they want to say. Whether it's rude, hateful, or whatever it is, they're going to have a good time. Kill Tony's going to be a laugh.
Who are you for in the battle between Ric Diez and Hans Kim?
Honestly, Hans. I don't have like a dog in the fight either way, but like I know a little bit more about Hans, so like I'm looking to see him show up tonight.
Team Hans, of course, all the way. Ric Diez, get that fool back to Brussels.
Oh, that's Hans all day.
Always Hans, just because I love Hans, but I respect Rick because I'm not gonna lie, self-deprivation comedy. It's hard to pull off when you're, he looks very interesting. We'll put it that way. Without
Rick. Yeah.
Team Rick.
Oh, Ric Diez, because I like the underdog.
I honestly, I'm going to say Ric Diez. I saw Hans Kim live, and he used a lot of his old jokes, so I think he needs to come up with some new material, so I'm a Ric Diez guy, 100% all day.
I'm Team Hans.
The Hans Kim vs. Ric Diez rematch not only took place in a much bigger arena, but it also contained an entirely different set of rules. This time around, each comic was allotted 2 minutes on stage instead of the traditional 60 seconds. And the winner was chosen not strictly on crowd noise, but rather the panel of judges voting, with the crowd reaction being counted as an additional vote and measured by an official noise reader. Ric Diez went first with a 2-minute and 20-second set that featured his typical style of dark one-liners, followed by Hans Kim, who performed a tight 2-minute set that touched on immigration and George Floyd. Unlike the first time, it was pretty clear based on the crowd's reaction in the moment who had won. But voting started off with Tim Dillon and Post Malone, who both chose Hans Kim. Tony Hinchcliffe then picked Ric Diez, and Red Band sealed the deal with his vote for Hans. The crowd response vote was measured anyway and also favored Hans, bringing the official tally to 4-1. Today we are lucky enough to be joined by both Hans Kim and Ric Diez on the show to discuss the rematch in more detail. Starting off with the double champ Hans Kim. What inspired you to even seek out this rematch after winning the first time?
A lot of people were talking about how bad my set was, but not a lot of people were talking about how bad his set was. He did barely enough to beat me according to the public opinion polls, but yeah, I really was like, I could probably do it again and write better jokes that land better. So I was just confident that I could beat him again, and I thought that would make me feel better. So I decided to challenge him again and sign myself up for another one of these stressful challenges that make me hate comedy a little bit.
What about it is the most stressful part? Is it the arena atmosphere? Is it the competition aspect?
Probably people thinking that I'm bad at comedy and that I'm not funny and that I'm untalented and spoiled and a waste of opportunity, and just like, oh, you've been doing nothing with your life for the last 10 years and you're not really good at anything.
So that sounds like you're talking mostly about, the people on Reddit that were just saying, the applause noise, whatever, you didn't win, the haters, as they say the first time. What do those people not understand about Kill Tony and doing a minute every single week, or stand-up in general, that you think is just not getting through to them?
I guess it's just like how hard it is and how like one set doesn't make you good or bad, and how like subjective comedy is, and how you have to like take into account the person's whole history of doing comedy and all their sets that they've done, and not just like one or two, and like being objective and not being like, oh, I hate him let me find ways to hate him for the next set, and then just starting this cycle of hatred.
Talking about the last time we saw you in that battle, the crowd was quick to boo everyone that whole night. You randomly got booed after just setting up your first joke of the set. Why have the crowds been so angry in the arenas?
I think the crowds are just feeling their power. And they're just like, there's like a critical mass of them. Like if you start booing at the Comedy Mothership, then people are gonna be like, "Oh, there he is, go get him." But if you're booing in an arena, then people don't know where you are, and you can just say and do whatever you want. So it's like the anonymity sort of is like the internet. But then you can look and see them and be like, "Hey, you're booing," and they're like, "Oh shit." They can see me.
That's a good point. It kind of messed up the rhythm of, I feel like, you and Rick both, like, it was harder to even get into the actual jokes. But obviously you won both of these matchups. Looking back at the battles, which judgment system did you prefer between just crowd noise or the panel also voting?
I think the panel voting is good, even though that would have lost me the match for my first challenge against Ric Diez. But yeah, I think it's more objective. I think the crowd is just like, they're very emotional and they vote with their heart. But the panel is like, oh shit, they're looking at me. If I say this guy was better, then they can go back and look at it and be like, you were wrong about comedy. So they have like an incentive to be like picking the right person so that they don't embarrass themselves.
I actually saw you working out these jokes at Vulcan back in April, which was pretty cool to see it from the workshop to the big stage. How long have you been honing in this exact 2 minutes to use against Rick?
The joke about the immigrants came right when all the immigrant stuff was happening. And then the David Lucas stuff came when in February when he was getting canceled for that. So I've just been working on those for a bit. And then the first one I used, the gay stuff, I was writing in my diary. All these jokes were pretty old, which was kind of made me nervous because that's the same thing that happened for the first set with my squirting joke that a lot of people didn't like. And so I was just like, am I doing the same mistake over again? Am I doing these old jokes that, might not be relatable? I might not be saying it the same way, but I was just like, whatever, these are the best jokes that I have. These are the jokes that I like. If you can't trust yourself, then you're lost in the sea anyway. So it's just like, okay, these are the jokes I'm gonna do. Yeah, for this one, I was just like, it. Like, I'm just gonna do what I do. I'm not gonna like try to change anything or stress myself out. And I was just more having fun with it. The first one, I was like pissed. I was mad that I had to do it. But for the second one, I was just like, fuck it. This is my life now.
Yeah, it came off that way. Like you were very in control and just having a really fun time up there. And it was great to see you working that out at the Vulcan because we haven't seen much of you in recent months on Kill Tony. Obviously, Casey Rocket's been filling in for you. Now that the Rick saga is over, are you going to be returning to the show weekly?
We haven't talked about it. I don't know what's happening. I would love to do Kill Tony, maybe like once or twice every now and then. I don't think like doing it every week is like a good clip just for me. Maybe just because I'm lazy or whatever. But yeah, I mean, if I have to, I would. I'm really trusting Tony. It's his show for a reason, and he makes the best calls. So I'm up for whatever he wants to do. But ideally, I would want to do it kind of like David Lucas is doing it. Just pop in whenever I have enough material and stuff.
Well, speaking of Tony making all the right calls, the big decisions, another huge thing that happened was your Hall of Fame ceremony induction featured Bobby Lee. Tony said that he was going to do that no matter what happened in the battle, but did you see that coming at all, and how did that moment feel?
No, I had no idea. I was like, there's no way I'm getting Hall of Fame till like way later because the guys that already got it were all the LA guys that have been doing it for 5 years. But I'm super glad I got it. I don't really, I used to be a huge fan. I mean, I am a huge fan of the show, but I don't really watch myself, so I don't really know how I fit in. For me, I'm just like scrambling whenever I'm on the show to just try to do well. So I don't really know what my role in the show is. I'm just like happy to be on my favorite show. So I don't really see myself into that universe because for me, Kill Tony was like, LA, Hollywood, and then everything that happened afterwards is sort of like,
yeah, that's crazy.
I'm just sort of like living it more than I'm watching it.
That's insane to even hear because like you are such a big part of the show. For someone that's watched the LA version, the Austin version, this whole thing, you in the Hall of Fame is a no-brainer. But speaking of being a fan of the show for a long time, how was it to see the current drum off of the current band versus Joelberg? I mean, that was such a throwback for like day one fans.
I know. Well, the band's completely different. They're actually a band now and less of like a comedy troupe. But yeah, it was interesting to see because, you know, Joelberg is so iconic. He was so loved. You know, even when he bombed, people loved it because he would just be like, I'm going to kill myself. And he would give it all for the fans.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that the new fans got to see some of that. And it was crazy doing it in LA, where that's where a lot of the people that were watching from the beginning are. And to see him do that, bring him back. I thought he was going to do a backflip. I guess he got a little old over the years. No, I'm just kidding.
That was really cool to see. Last question for you here, Hans, and thank you so much for your time today. The next big show that you guys have planned is Madison Square Garden, as we all know. Without a battle for regularship, which has been the selling point of these big shows, do you have any predictions of what Tony might have up his sleeve, or what are you feeling heading into Madison Square Garden?
Well, I don't know. Maybe he'll have me battle Casey Rocket. I don't know what's happening on the show really. There's something crazy coming up. I was there at the live episode once, and there's this guy that's really likable. But yeah, I don't know what they have planned. I mean, the YouTube theater show is amazing, and there wasn't too much planned there.
Yeah.
I think the show is just beautiful within itself, you know, like David Lucas roasting. That was a beautiful moment on the
That was
YouTube
great.
theater. And I don't know, it seems like there's less bucket pulls in the big episodes, which I think is better. Because you know, some of the bucket pulls are not very good. We already brought up Bruce Buffer, so I don't know where we go from here. But you know, Tony's always got something up his sleeves.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be great. I can't wait to see how it all unfolds. But thank you so much for your time today, Hans. Anything else that you think the people should know about this battle? Any upcoming dates? Any socials? Any last words?
I have a tour, hanskimcomedian.com. Yeah, I mean, these battles are really stressful, and I just want to go back to doing comedy normally. You know, I don't think that we should compete comedically. I think everyone, it's like comedy is like sort of a sport, but also sort of like an art form where it's like everyone has a different perspective, and just battling it out, I don't think is the best avenue. I think it's good to foster different creative ideas. So I think battling is like something that, you know, made sense for me just because I'm, you know, like a robot or whatever. But yeah, I don't want to battle anytime soon. I don't want to compete. You know, all these people were my friends up until Ric Diez. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to battle. I would love to get better at comedy without having to, you know, be stressed out. But yeah, I think comedy is beautiful in terms of like fostering different creative people. I would love to just get back to just you know, working on my comedy without the fear of embarrassment. I think that might help. So I'm just excited to do normal comedy now, not competitions.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All right, Hans Kim, thank you so much. Ric Diez, it's been about 72 hours since everything went down at the Forum. How are you feeling right now looking back at this whole entire thing?
Fantastic. I would say that the night of the Forum, I wasn't feeling fantastic, but I told myself, just give yourself time to have hindsight and don't believe your current emotions. And then I let the night go through. I talked to people, and 2 days later, I feel fantastic.
I think you should feel fantastic. I mean, that was quite the journey. One thing that I noticed, the crowd was booing everyone all night long. Did that mess you up at all? And why have these arena crowds been so quick to boo?
I'm assuming I can tell this because at the end of the day, it is shown in the episodes, right? What happened at HEB Center, the crowd booed a lot on night one and less on night two. And that was because after what happened on night one, when they started night two at HEB Center, Tony told the crowd to please listen and let people do their minute. When they started the show at the LA Forum, they forgot to do that. And then when they started the show at the YouTube theater, they did do that. They remembered to do that. On the other hand, the boos are kind of like fun, you know? Like, it's like, well, if you're gonna suck, we're gonna boo you. But so maybe like David Lucas was telling me he kind of likes the boos. But I personally feel like I don't mind the boos if you're sucking, but you should be given a little bit of a shot to prove that you're not sucking, that you're going somewhere. You know?
Yeah, because they were booing on like the setup a lot of times. It just kind of ruined the flow.
Yeah, it ruined the flow. But what I thought was I was prepared for anything in my head. When I saw they were booing everybody, I thought, well, they're gonna boo me too. Plus, with the battle context, there's a chance they're gonna boo me regardless. So I started with the boos, and I feel like I turned them around by the end of my set. So I was actually proud.
It was quite an impressive thing to watch someone in the LA Forum go from start. Well, it actually started off with a long applause for you. You kind of stood there. That's why
I screwed up. Tony
Yeah.
Hinchcliffe told me I made one mistake, but this is due to my. It's just for me to learn. It's lessons learned for me. And he told me I made a mistake as an advice and with empathy. He didn't say that aggressively or meanly. But he told me, like, when you're in those crowds, like, it's good that I give the crowd a chance to give an applause and to enjoy the moment and for me to enjoy the moment. But I took just too long and I give them time to turn on me. But next time I do a show, I know what to do now. If I had started maybe 5 seconds earlier, 10 seconds earlier, but I was even prouder that I turned them around with the experience I have, which is also it's easier to turn a crowd around in 2 minutes. Hans did the same. They put him even worse than me, and he turned them around even better than me because he believes in his material as well. So he sorted that situation for himself.
Well, speaking of the crowd, looking back at both battles, people will probably say the first one was closer, but whatever judgment system that they used, do you prefer what they did this last time with the panel and the crowd, or just the crowd? What do you think is more fair?
It's very interesting. I will say the more fair thing is whatever makes you win, right? I don't think there's a fair solution. I think the crowd at the end of the day are the ultimate Kiltony fans. So I don't mind that it's the crowd voting. I do feel like the order in which you're going on stage makes a huge difference. And being allowed to get a recount makes a huge difference. Like on night one, if they had said, okay, let's revote, but now you vote for Rick last.
Right.
Right? Because it was so close. I don't really care. What I care about these battles is, I mean, of course, it's great if you can win. What I loved about it was the opportunities it got me, being able to show my act and show my evolution, because I feel like I performed a different type of content and in a different way at the forum than I did at the HEB Center. And this time around, I was in much more control of what I was doing. And I like the jokes I've said. I don't, if I was, I told myself, if you lose saying these jokes, it doesn't matter. These are the jokes I wanted to say.
Speaking of those actual jokes, how long were you honing in this exact 2 minutes that you plan to use against Hans in this battle? And do you think that extending it out to 2 minutes helped or hurt?
With regards to the battle itself and to the result, I feel like nothing I could have done or chosen would have changed the result. It was still Hans's crowd out there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So when I was hearing the pops and knowing the jokes I do, I feel like a lot of the crowd was there for me and grateful. But in terms of like statistically, I think I had zero chance still. And in terms of the amount of minutes, honestly, I could have done 3-4 minutes. I had so many jokes. I was finalizing the selection of jokes up until the last day.
After the crowd weighed in, we saw you kind of chatting with Hans on stage. What were you guys talking about during that moment, like after the battle had been decided, and how does that relationship stand right now?
I don't like to talk inside baseball, but when I knew they were gonna vote, the crowd was gonna vote for me first, and I still got a good applause. And Hans said something like, "Oh man," like he expressed
he said they
concern,
loved
And I just went to him and I summarized the thing. It was like, "Dude, you got this. Like you're gonna see the pop you're gonna get is gonna be so much louder. Don't worry about it."
Yeah.
And it was the case, right? Because I knew, because if they voted for the second, it's benchmarking sound, and he's got a larger fan base. So I told him, let's just relax. You got this. And I congratulated him. And I feel like right now our entertainment beef is as squashed as it can be. So I feel like a weight is lifted off of his shoulders and of my shoulders. We can move on.
Well, outside of just the battle at the forum, it looks like you had an insane week just based on your Instagram, hanging out with everyone from RFK, Post Malone, Schultz, Jimmy Carr. What were some of your favorite moments in LA?
Besides Kiltony, besides the Kiltony events themselves and the hanging out at those events, was Andrew Schultz. He came to me to talk to me. And he told me that he had seen my stuff, and he gave me good advice, and that's how I ended up choosing the jokes I ended up choosing at the forum. I'm not saying he's responsible for my loss. Yes, you are. I'm just, but he told me like to focus on jokes that I find funny and that I wanted to tell.
That makes sense.
Because he just played the forum, so coming from his perspective, I thought it mattered. And then I had a cool little moment where I was chatting to a pretty famous comedian, but then another famous comedian was there. Dave Chappelle was there at the store. Yeah, he came up. I saw Dave Chappelle look at me. He walked up to me. He shook my hand and he said, "Give it up for my friend, Neil Brennan." And he walked away.
That's unreal. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was completely unreal. Very funny. I'm assuming he still doesn't have a clue who I am, but it was hilarious.
Last thing here, we saw that you retained your golden ticket, which is a big deal. Do you have any plans yet? I mean, I know it just happened, but what do you think that will look like as far as your relationship with Kill Tony moving forward? How often you'll try to use that golden ticket?
I would like to use it at least once this year, maybe twice, depending on their calendar. It will depend on a lot of things, but my plans are just immediate, like, next week's or whatever. You should not expect me on Kill Tony. I'm gonna go back home and do other things. Later in the year or next year, I hope to be able to be there for Kill Tony fans way more regularly, and whether that's being on Kill Tony, on being somewhere near you where you can come see me, that's the plan.
Obviously, you have your whole life overseas, and it's so easy just to be like, I'm gonna move to America for comedy. But do you think that is the writing on the wall eventually? Like, you have a majority of your fan base here. There's more opportunities for stand-up in general here. Like, what's next for comedian Ric Diez in your career landscape? Do you think that moving to the States is the right choice? Is that something you're interested in?
I don't know if time will tell that. I'm a pragmatic person. I don't like to just say things and I don't know if they're going to happen or not. My plan is to find the way and being able to be in the US for extended periods of time.
Yeah.
Whether that's a permanent move or not, it will depend also on a lot of personal factors.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, Ric, thank you so much. I think this is our third interview together. You've always been very gracious, giving us time to talk with you. Do you have any socials, any upcoming things any last words that you want the people to know?
Yeah, so please come see my show in Rotterdam at Club Haug. I'm a paid regular there. I have my hour show once a month. For the next one is on the 31st of May. So if you're in the Netherlands or in Belgium or nearby, you can take a train and come see me in Rotterdam. And my next show in French, my next hour in French is on the 3rd of June at Petit Kings of Comedy in Brussels. So that's on the 3rd of June. I also have an hour in English in Brussels at the Black Sheep in Brussels on the 11th of June. And you can follow my socials, that's Sadman Ric, on every platform. And I'm going to do I want to announce this, so please put that in there. I'm going to do an AMA through Instagram, and I'll publish it through YouTube.
Let's go.
So I'm going to tell the longest story of everything. To any questions any fans are going to have, I'm going to set that up. But I want to be back in Brussels to do that. So probably around next week, I'll start do that.
Aside from interviewing Ric and Hans, we also had our trusty Joke World correspondent, Karen Jones, live on the scene all weekend long, in order to give us all even more firsthand insight on Kill Tony's biggest show ever. Karen, thank you so much for being here, our boots on the ground. We all know what happened from the point of view of the live stream, but how is this show from your vantage point?
It was excellent. I was able to go to both the New Year's Eve shows at the HEB Arena, and they were great also, but I think improvements were made. I think some of the most notable improvements involved getting people on stage. There were real comedians. It was great seeing people from the comic section getting pulled up. So it was great.
Well, one thing that was definitely a big talking point was the overwhelming boos when Tony brought up a potential deal with Netflix. What are people's thoughts in the Kill Tony community about a Netflix deal? Did you learn any more about that?
I found the booing baffling. I wasn't quite sure myself. And we talked, different comedians talked afterwards. Some speculated that there were a bunch of Hulu execs in the crowd. Some people thought it was just drunk silliness. But I think maybe people are worried that if Kill Tony changes, it will lose its natural homegrown feel and that anything goes feeling that it has, as some of the spontaneity. So that may be the concern, but I'm kind of excited. I like that Tony keeps going onward and upward, and I think it's probably going to be good for the show. What's good for Tony Hinchcliffe is good for Kill Tony, so it's probably going to work out.
What was your reaction to Ari's balls?
The same as it always is. I've seen his genitalia probably more than I've seen my own husband's, for sure, this last year I have. But that said, every time I see Ari's balls, I think, my husband is 20 years older than that man and has better looking testicles. I would keep them in my pants if I was Ari.
Well, before we get into the main battle, we had the best Mexican drum off of all time go down between Joel Berg, the original drummer, and Michael Gonzalez, the current drummer. Do you think that the Kill Tony fans inside Kia Forum were more old school fans or new school fans? Do you think they were happy to see Joel Berg win? What was your thoughts on the Mexican drum off? I mean, that was insane.
It was a lot like the Hans Kim Ric Diez thing from New Year's Eve, that the hometown crowd was clearly for Joel. Joel also had the energy. He was really going for broke. He was playing with a lot more aggressive style, where a lot of us from Austin feel like Michael Gonzalez just is not only the better drummer, he did the better job, but sometimes the best man doesn't win. The thing that may have really won it for Joel was the Ari imitation. You know, get naked and all of a sudden you're the most popular guy in the room.
Well, the battle between Hans and Rick seems to have come to an end, with Hans reigning as double champ. How did those sets feel from inside the building, and what are people saying about Hans versus Rick?
Well, there was a lot of excitement building up to it, of course. And there are a lot of Rick fans, not just among the comedians, but in general, because I spoke to people going in. Hans had more fans, but Rick still had a strong showing as far as people there to support him. However, I don't think that there was any doubt that Hans won. There were things happening that I think threw Rick, and it's unfortunate, but there was a lot of heckling and booing, and it just seemed really strange, and it was hard for him to get in the groove starting out. It definitely messed with his timing, and he was doing a character kind of comedy, he reminds me a little bit of Andy Kaufman sometimes. But Hans came with some of his strongest material. He was very offensive, which always is a win. You know, when Hans doesn't pull his punches, he does his best stuff. And he was hilarious. He was strong. And I will say he was also a lot classier in his victory. Maybe because he knew he earned it this time. I was proud of both of them. I think both of them are good for comedy, but Hans clearly won.
Well, with no more battles for regularship possible, what do you think Tony Hinchcliffe could have up his sleeve heading into Madison Square Garden?
I couldn't help but think when RFK Jr. came on that there's something there. Even though it's a little weird, the guy is about as hilarious as most politicians, which is not. But he did okay. And when he came on, we weren't sure it was him. We really thought it was Adam Ray doing RFK, because Adam Ray had not yet come on as Dr. Phil. But once it clearly was RFK, it got me to thinking, how cool would it be for former President Trump to demand equal time? And at Madison Square Garden, which Trump, you know, that's his home turf, it would be so cool for him and RFK Jr. to have a battle, Hans Kim Rick style, and whoever wins the minute then can challenge the guy with the championship belt, President Biden, to the grand championship. Since it doesn't look like there are debates happening and this is a presidential election year, that would be really fun to see RFK Jr. and Donald Trump give us their best minute. I think it'd be hilarious.
Well, Karen Jones, thank you so much as always for being our boots on the ground, and hopefully we'll see you reporting live outside of Madison Square Garden sometime soon. If you weren't watching live and want to check out Kill Tony's 2 recent shows at the Forum and YouTube Theater before they hit YouTube, replay tickets are still available for purchase online. Guest spots from last week: The Joe Rogan Experience had on Derek Poston, Two Bears One Cave had Jimmy Carr on the show, Kill Tony this week was with Dr. Phil and Akash Singh, Harland Williams came all over your mom's house, We Might Be Drunk welcomed Dre De Matteo, Tiz Buds battled Soft Pretzels vs. Warm Nuts, Andrew Santino was on the way back, UB Trippin discussed China with Colin Terrell, Adam Friedland Show welcomed Lev Fur, Are You Garbage brought back Lil Sass, Guard Dog and Nate Marshall took a trip to Stuff Island, and we interviewed Mark Normand right here on Joke World. Speaking of the crowds, do the people at these shows in the city know that you're on the lineup beforehand? And is there a difference in how much you trust a reaction to a new joke if it's told in front of your crowd versus a random audience?
Wow, good question. See, that's why you're the guy. It's a very smart question there. You want both. So I with the Comedy Cellar, I usually do it unannounced. I don't know why. I like it better that way. And at the other clubs, I usually announce. Okay. So sometimes you need your people to kind of boost you along and like kind of hold your hand. Like, I trust you. I'll stay with you. Mm-hmm. And then you also need the other crowd to go, We don't know you. We don't give a shit. It's either funny or not funny.
This past weekend with Theo Von talked with Zach Brown. DJ Academic stopped by Flagrant. Matt and Shane's Secret Podcast welcomed James McCann. Andy Haynes was on Soder. Gary Owen made an appearance on Whiskey Ginger. Stavi's World welcomed Paige Kennedy. Nikki Glazer was a guest on Tiger Belly. The Blocks Podcast had on Tig Notaro. Rick Glassman had his dad and Uncle Teddy take their shoes off. And Be an Ian with Jordan welcomed Nathan McIntosh. As far as new stand-up comedy specials are either out right now or coming out soon, Nikki Glazer's Someday You'll Die is out right now on Max. Out on YouTube is Ian Fidance Wild, Happy, and Free on the Be an Ian with Jordan channel. Brad Williams Starfish out on his channel. Colin Quinn's new special that was filmed in front of a psychiatrist convention titled Our Time Is Up is also out on YouTube. And not a special, but Stuck in Park is a fantastic 9-minute short comedy film by Sam Rubidoff that features comedians like Joe List, Corinne Feehan, and Keith Robinson. Netflix has new content from Cat Williams with his special Woke Folk, and also out on Netflix is Cat's good pal Kevin Hart's Mark Twain Award ceremony. And speaking of Kevin Hart, Mark Norman Page to Stage is out right now on Punch Up Live, which is a behind-the-scenes look like never before at the joke writing process of Mark Normand. There's also a few specials in the works right now that will be coming out soon, starting off with Joe Coy on Netflix June 4th with Live from Brooklyn. Also out on Netflix will be Rachel Feinstein Big Guy May 21st, Franco Escamilla Ladies Man May 23rd, and of course also on May 23rd is Tires Etc. from Shane Gillis and John McKeever. If you're not busy right now, please consider checking out our newest interview with Mark Normand on the end screen right after this. And also, I just want to say it's unreal that we get to interview people like Mark, Hans, and Rick, all because you guys continue to support this channel by watching the videos, liking, subscribing, commenting, all that gay stuff really adds up, and I really appreciate it. For real, thank you so much for tuning into these videos. Be sure to check out the description. There's a link to claim your free Joke World stickers, and we'll be back again soon with some more comedy news.
At Joke World. That's it, at Joke World.
And the world is WRLD.
That's a great YouTube channel, Joke World. Check it out.